Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Valuco and welcome to Personal Pans, conversations about belief, transformation, and all the weird and wonderful things we experience. Today's episode is with Melaninated Magician, a writer, Thelemite, and diversity professional. And you know what? When you talk to somebody who does this for a living, you have the most incredible conversation about diversity and inclusion. This is something I care a lot about. What does it mean to foster relationships with, to create community with people who don't look like you? And we ended up having this incredible conversation about structural bigotry and what real inclusion looks like. And it just made me so happy because Nick brought up this really incredible point, which is, if you care about the phenomena, if you care about the paranormal, and you care about getting a full picture of information, when you don't talk to people who don't look like you, you get this incredibly narrow worldview about what is out there in terms of cryptids or in terms of occult beliefs. There is this incredible power in speaking to people who have different backgrounds and different life experiences than you do, not only for just mundane things, but also in terms of paranormal and the occult. This was an incredible, I'm nearly speechless. This was an incredible conversation, and I hope you enjoy it as well.
So hello, it's nice to meet you.
It's good to meet you too.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate this because, like I said, I read your blog posts, like I see your tweets, and I just like, you have a perspective on Thelema and on the occult in general that really jives with how I see things. Part of that is because I'm a chaos magician, and I'm like, everybody should just do whatever, like not whatever, but like there should be more freedom and more accessibility and openness,
Yeah.
as opposed to like kind of stodgy ideas of magic rooted in history. It's like we're always trying to recover some imagined history as opposed to like, what are we living in right now that can be
Right.
part of the current? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it seems so backwards. I mean, I guess it literally is backwards. It's backwards thinking.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems wild to me that like people who are so open to, and I mean, you brought up the occult, but I think it's this way in the paranormal too, that people are so open to the idea that like ghosts are real, or Bigfoot might be a fairy, or that like I can affect the world with my mind, but everybody who's ever lived has already figured out everything that we can.
Oh,
Like that makes
thank
no fucking
you.
sense at all.
Thank you. Exactly. I feel like I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but like my boss is normal, right? And so
Right.
I love telling her, I'm like, oh, you would not believe the close-mindedness in a community that literally believes in Bigfoot and nuts and bolts UFOs. Like, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
and
Yes.
and and it seems wild too, and I know that the Newkirks are big advocates of this. It seems wild too that there are so many people who look at the world and they think all of the social structures that we've built, like, yeah, we already got those right, but like maybe we don't know the exact truth about time loops, and like they're hiding it from us. Like, what? Really? Do you really think that? Do you really think that we figured out how to live in a society with Black people, but we haven't figured out time loops? Like,
Oh, oh my God. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you so much. Because like this is the kind of stuff that drives me wild too. Because again, like I've always been interested in paranormal things, in occult things. You know, I used to obsessively watch X-Files, like in the original run. Like it's been a part of my life for a long time. And also in college, I was studying sociology and women's studies and psychology, and really gravitated towards, you know, theories. Again, so much of feminist theory that I studied is, you know, intersectional, anti-racist, like truly understanding, like, okay, let's deconstruct what we think we know in society, what we think we know about each other. Like, so much of what we are taught is just like a system to support the people on top. So let's
Exactly.
deconstruct all these things. And so, yeah, it's so wild to see people just like, oh, well, okay, let me tell you what's a government conspiracy. And it's like, what about systemic inequality?
Redlining?
Right? Like, we have proof of this. Yes.
What about gendered violence? Like, we know that those are conspiracies. Like, literally, people are conspiring to make those things happen. But like, no, it's like the disclosure thing. Like, that's where they're pulling the wool over our eyes for sure.
That's where they're trying to get us. Exactly. Yeah. Like it just, and like to focus on that.
Yep.
And to focus on these things when it's like, no, people's lives are at stake right now.
Exactly.
Their lives. Like, cool, you want to believe in ghosts? Cool. UFOs? Cool. All of it? Cool. You are here right now with other people who are here right now. Everybody's dealing with different varying levels of shit depending on where they are and like hegemonic pyramid of power, right? Maybe pay attention to that too. I'm already, like I said, coming in hot.
Well, I mean, so I think about all this stuff every day. This is part of what I do in my work, is talking about diversity issues. So, I mean, for me, it's just so natural that everything that I do runs through the lens of like, how are people thinking about systems of oppression? How are we treating each other? How are we making space for each other? And not just from, I mean, race and gender are easy to think about because you can see them. They're visible. But like also thinking about like, there's an episode of Kindred Spirits. That's my favorite episode of Kindred Spirits, where the ghost in the house didn't speak English. So they kept trying to like communicate with this ghost and they weren't getting anywhere, and they ended up doing research to find that the original homeowner was Polish. So they found a medium who spoke Polish, who came in and was able to communicate to this guy. These people aren't trying to destroy your house. They're remodeling the kitchen so that it's modern. And the activity stopped. So, I mean, setting aside how you conceive of ghost activity, even if you think it's literally only dead people, like just thinking about something simple like what language do you speak and how can I meet you where you're at is so important. So if you can believe that, why can't you believe that about your neighbor who's a like real flesh and blood person who you can have an easy conversation with?
Oh my God, exactly.
Or the guy who owns the convenience store down the street or something like that.
You're blowing my mind. Like this is the only stuff I care about. Like I love paranormal stuff, occult stuff, obviously, but it is these social issues that are intentionally like we're made to be ignorant of these things in order to perpetuate again these systems of inequality. And so picking at that, poking at it, bringing it to light, like that is where real power is. That to me, that's also a magical act, right? You're just like you're taking this thing and you're saying like, oh, I'm not supposed to look at this and I'm not supposed to talk at it. Guess what? Here, I've got your real, like your fairy name now. Like this has no control over me anymore, right?
Right. Or
And
even
that, go ahead.
Even to think about it from like an occult perspective or a mystical perspective, like thinking through your internal biases and your own unconscious biases, like that's inner alchemy.
Yes.
You're reflecting on yourself and doing the internal work that you need to be the best version of yourself. Like, shouldn't we all be aspiring to that?
Isn't that the whole point of magic in general, right? Like, again, it's like, because some people, they're like, well, I control the weather. It's like, cool. Are you even in control of your own brain and your own thoughts? Like, maybe, do you know what your biases are and whether society has put them in your brain? Like, it's like the great work, like you said, it's that inner alchemy. It's And it's also, again, tying into what we were talking about at the top of this idea of like magic, like, okay, is this a thing that was given to us hundreds, thousands of years ago that we're just reenacting? Or is it an ongoing process and an ongoing dialogue that evolves with our understanding? So again, it's similar to like, okay, you have to do that internal work. Like if you, especially if you grew up where, you know, with a racist family or sexism, any of that, which we all did, by the way. And,
Right.
but if you're not aware of it, you can't fight against it. And you're not fully in control of who you are in your own mind. Like,
Exactly.
this is very, like, to me, this is very basic. Like, it's very simple and it's essential and it's just not talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even thinking about let's live in a fantasy world where none of this is an issue. Just the basic idea that like we didn't figure out like indoor plumbing until like 200 years ago, but we like had all of the secrets of the universe and the way that like reality itself works. Like, make that make sense. Like, just make it make sense.
Oh my God. Yes. I want that on a t-shirt. Because yes, exactly. Like again, you can believe, and I do that, you know, a spiritual creature in a meat sack. But like again, the ancient Egyptians, they just took that brain right out when somebody died because they're like,
Right.
this is useless. It's an ongoing process. It's again, but people get caught up. I
Yeah.
think so much ego gets wrapped up in this, and it's like you got to leave that at the door if you really want to get to an understanding of, again, of each other. That's all that really matters ultimately, right? The relationships
Right.
that we have with each other. Are we fostering good communities? Do we care about community, right? What does community really mean?
Yes.
Working together is part of an ongoing dialogue with each other and with ourselves. It's not just like, okay, it's done. It's figured out, right? Right. The OTO got it or whatever, you know,
Right.
we just got to keep that they figured it out. No, they knew what they knew at the time in that historical milieu, in that cultural milieu. Things have changed. Things are
Exactly.
constantly changing. Our beliefs should too. Our systems should.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I everything that you just said, yes. Like, yes, absolutely. But also it takes for granted that all of us are like rowing in the same direction. And we're clearly not.
Yeah.
Because there are clearly some people who look at the whole setup and think, well, I know where power can lie for me. So like, let me make sure I keep the door shut as tightly as I can so I can keep getting mine. And like, that seems like that's part of what like going backwards to Egypt or Sumeria or Babylon or even Greece or Rome, like it's all about saying like, I figured out everything that can be figured out.
Uh-huh.
So if you want the secrets, you gotta go through me.
Oh, yes.
Which is
God,
basically
yes.
the same as racism. It's basically the same as the way that sexism or homophobia or transphobia work. That it's about saying, I know the right way to be, and you're not it.
Yes. Right. Right. And using a historical sources tradition in order to justify their biases. And again, that fear of relinquishing whatever control you think you have. Again, I say it that way because it's like so many people think they have power, and it's like, yes, you have like a little bit, but
Right.
unless you're at the tippy top, you know, unless you're part of one of those like 200 billionaire families like in the world, you got nothing. It's all going to be taken away at any point, right? You ultimately have nothing. But you have this illusion of power that you can maintain in order to make yourself feel important or better, as opposed to, again, fostering like real connections with people. Like what is real freedom? This is another thing I think about a lot. Like,
Yep.
like, and what does freedom mean? And are you free if it's at the expense of others, right?
Yes. Yes. And I think that a thing that's just so tough for me to reckon with is like those questions should and can be at the center of like Thelema, of like ultimately like what does it mean for us to treat every man and every woman, or really let's update it, every person as a
Yes.
star.
Yes.
It's giving everybody, granting everybody the autonomy to do whatever it is that they need to do.
Yeah.
But like, how do you do that? You can't just do that by saying everybody can do whatever they want. It's fine. Like eventually that's not going to work. Eventually somebody's going to say, well, what I want to do is steal all your stuff.
Right.
Or what I want to do is just kill you because I don't like your face.
Right.
So how do we work through that? And I think that Thelema has built into it enough to like start people going. But again, if you don't want to do that, you don't have to.
Yeah. Yes. And it's when I talked to Iris Anya Moon, I was not familiar with the concept of reclaiming or the tradition of reclaiming witchcraft. And it really spoke to me because it was this idea that, okay, we keep learning as we go along, you know, even the principles of reclaiming, that is constantly being updated because again, our understanding is constantly changing. And this idea of living traditions to me is very powerful, right? It's important to interrogate and to have a dialogue, again, with what you think, even who you think you are, to make sure like, okay, is this really mine, or is this something that society has put in my brain that I think is mine and that isn't really mine? And so yes, it would, because I don't know much about Thelema at all, but it seems to what you're saying, like, yeah, we have to, it can't just be the books, right? It's like people are still practicing it. And what is the it's hard to say community because I know there's so many different offshoots, but like, okay, if we have a certain belief system and we have certain principles, like what do we do to enshrine those moving forward? Again, to make sure that people are taken care of, that we have a community, that people are respected regardless of what they look like, and you know, because you had talked about like ableism too, like how do we update these texts to make them accessible? It's not about watering down the material, it's about presenting them to people, right, in a way that they can absorb.
Right. And I mean, like Thelema is a great way to talk about this. That like, I mean, so first of all, when we talk about Thelema, there's people talking about Thelema as a religion, people talking about it as a philosophy, and people talking about it as like kind of like a magical technology. And in theory, Crowley imagined it as being all three at the same time, but none of those. And that's its own thought experiment that you can go through. But thinking about it from a religious standpoint, like we basically have no infrastructure. Like the OTO exists, but there are like 2,300 people who are in the OTO all across the planet.
Okay. Yeah.
There are fewer people than that in the like tiny podunk town that I live in Florida.
Yeah.
So like there's basically no Thelemites. And that's if we just count people who are in the OTO. If we count solitary people who are in all of the offshoots, which are almost all tiny anyway, I mean, it's still probably 10,000 people, maybe a little bit more than that. It's like, it's not a lot of people. So there's not the same kind of infrastructure that if you were like a Buddhist or a Christian, that you would say, if you were talking to somebody new or talking to somebody who's trying to refresh their understanding, you would say, come to church with me, come to temple with me. We'll listen to our religious leader talk. They'll give us some ideas. We'll have a conversation with other people. Like you can't.
Yeah.
Because like with who? I mean, there's the state of North Carolina is not a small state. There's one OTO lodge for the entire state of North Carolina, and it's not in the largest city in North Carolina. It's in Raleigh.
Oh no.
Right. And I think there's good reason for that. There are some big name Thelemites that live in Raleigh.
Sure.
But most people who live in North Carolina don't live in Raleigh. So like everybody's got to travel. Like that. No, that's not going to work.
Right. Exactly.
So, but like if I think about, again, the town I live in it's small. There are 7,000 people who live in this town. There are 7 churches. So like it's super easy if you're trying to find Christianity here to find that.
Right. Yes.
But like Thelema is really hard. So like
Of course.
reckoning with how we build the right kinds of structures to help people self-discover,
Yes.
whether it's that they have ADHD or some sort of learning difference, or thinking about, I mean, I know a barrier for me exploring Crowley for a little while is that as a Black person, I just expect that if I like am reading a white writer from before 1950, they might say something bigoted.
Yes.
So like that's a barrier, and I'll be honest, that's a barrier for me sharing Crowley with family members, with friends, because like I know even if I say like, look, it's fine, that they'd be like, but is it really fine? Or are you trying to convert me to something? Like,
of course. Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, breaking down those barriers is how we get to have enough people that like people can start taking us seriously.
Yes.
Breaking down those barriers is how we get to a point where, I mean, I think every Thelemite knows that even in the broader culture, people think we're like weird and crazy. So like part of like breaking down that just like that basic barrier of like, no, I'm like just as normal of a weirdo as you are, is like if there are more than 4 of us.
Right.
And maybe like more than 2 different kinds of Thelemites.
Right.
And not just, and I mean, I love goths. I am married to a recovering goth girl. I take a lot of instruction and a lot of teaching from a lot of goths, but like everybody's not a goth. So like, how do we build enough space aesthetically in Thelema for somebody who like likes hip hop or like is really into the color pink, or like is okay with going out in the daytime? Like, how do we build enough space just for people to just be different in like boring ways that people are different?
I aside from like the pure comedy of this, it's hitting my heart in like all the best ways, as also a recovering goth who never really fit in, because I always felt, I'm like, okay, sure, I'm gonna listen to 9 Inch Nails, but do I have to put on mascara? You know, like it's like there's this certain type of uniform, right, for like a subculture, right? And so you're talking about like Thelema, like, yes, it's like, okay, do we all need to do the red bold lip and the black eyeliner and like, again, the goth clothes and those like platform demonia boots? Like, we all don't fit that, you know? Call me 20 years ago, I'd be game, but now, like, no.
Yeah.
No.
And like,
yeah.
And like, I think it's really easy for somebody for whom like all these spaces are really comfortable to listen to these conversations and think, okay, well, what does it matter? Like, that's a lot of aesthetic stuff, or that, like, we know racism is a problem, but like we're all people, and like I'm not racist, so like I'm open to treating everybody like on their own terms. But if there's not the space for people to be different like that, one, they won't come, and then 2, we end up getting the same 12 ideas about what magic can be. We end up getting the same 12 ideas about what it means to what even we're talking about when we talk about the great work.
Yes.
We get the same 12 ideas about what a good ritual is. We get the same 12 ideas about basically everything. And then that's how we get stuck in this loop of like, actually the Egyptians figured this all out. Because like we're talking to the same 12 people who believe that the Egyptians already figured it out.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. Because, yes. And this, again, to broaden it out a little bit, I feel the same way about the paranormal and the occult.
Yes.
It is so much of it is like white dudes from a specific class, right? And at like a certain type of upbringing. And so they all have pretty similar ideas because of their cultural milieu, because of, again, all these intersecting systems of domination, right? And then they're like, oh, well, nobody in the field is saying anything new and interesting. It's like, because you aren't talking to people who don't look like you.
Right.
So if you did, you'd hear all sorts of interesting, really cool ideas. I promise you, right?
Right.
It's that, and I'm going to even take it further out because I am also a nerd, right? And I've been to anime conventions and I've been to comic book conventions, right? Everybody, like, let's talk about uniforms. Yeah.
Yep. I'm a huge nerd too. Yes, exactly. You get the same 4 anime that everybody likes that are about the same 2 things.
Yes.
You get people loving the same like 3 comic book characters.
Yes.
And like thinking about those comic book characters in the same way.
Yes.
That like you don't get any innovation, you don't get anybody thinking new cool thoughts.
That's it.
And it just, I mean, it feels like did you even like pay attention while you were watching Star Trek?
Oh, that's
like
oh my God, thank you. Yes, that's the big one for me. Like, I grew up watching Next Generation. Like, don't start with any like those articles about like woke Star Trek. I'm like, were you literally not watching? Were you in a coma while the TV was on? Because that's the only way you could say that. Like,
right? I mean, there's a reason why Star Trek was the only primetime television show that Dr. King would let his kids watch.
Right.
And that was, I mean, we act like Dr. King was alive 1,000 years ago. So like, it's been with us for
exactly
a long time, but at the same time, not that long ago.
Also that's right. Right. That's the weird thing about all of this to me too, because again, I remember when like conversations about trans identity and queer identity, I was only hearing about that in women's studies classes.
Yep.
And now it's everywhere. These conversations are everywhere. And again, not that long, but feels like it's that weird time kind of dilation, right? Where it like feels forever ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. Like, I don't think people really get like, no, there's been a huge culture shift. And like, it's great, but I think a lot of people are kind of getting whiplash because they are not used to this, you know?
Yeah.
It's, oh gosh, I feel like I could talk to you about so many different things. But yeah, to get back to, and my ADHD brain is just like firing on all cylinders right now, but like to get back to this idea of, again, community, and who are we talking to, right?
Mm-hmm.
If, like you said, if it's just the same people who are talking about the same anime and they get threatened by somebody with a different idea and a different opinion and react in that, from that place of being threatened, of course more diverse voices don't hang out with them, because why would you? Like,
right.
I kept so many of my interests to myself because I was just so sick of being dismissed as a woman.
Yep.
At every turn. It's like, really? You're in these nerd cultures because you're rejecting like society and you're just reproducing the same structures? You know,
Yep.
fuck off. Like,
Exactly.
The outrage of that. Like this should be a place for true intellectual exploration, right? Like, oh, but you're just going to just take all these biases wholesale and just keep them. Why?
Right.
Like, what's the point of that?
Yeah. But then, I mean, so yes, a billion times all that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, and I think this is a problem in nerd spaces. This is a problem in paranormal spaces and occult spaces too, that because those spaces can be kind of small sometimes, that you also get people who are like having too broad of a conception of community, where it starts including people that like maybe you're not actually in community with them though.
Yeah.
And we don't have good mechanisms for people to be able to say like, we kind of like the same thing, but like definitely not in the same way.
Yeah.
So you stay right where you're at, and I'm gonna go over there with some other people that I know are all on the same page as I am. Yes. And I'm not saying that you're bad, but I am saying we aren't sitting at the same table. And that's
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Yes.
And it just, I think it leads to a lot of the reproduction of a lot of then bias, where people are like, well, we know that Tommy isn't like super okay with gay people, but like he does love aliens. So we're gonna let him keep coming around as long as he doesn't talk about gay people too badly,
Right.
because he gets what we're talking about disclosure. So like, if you are gay, I hope you're okay with Tommy maybe sometimes using the F slur, because like sometimes he does it, but he means well. And like, he just really thinks that we're right around the corner on disclosure. And he's got a guy who works at the Pentagon who knows some stuff. So like, if we alienate him, we lose this just like great information resource. So like, I really hope you can sit with the fact that like he might not think you're a full person, because he knows where the alien cave base task force is.
Oh my God, I think I'm gonna faint. This. Oh my God, that like there's no way I can top like exactly.
Like I said, I spend all day, every day thinking about all of the ways that people can be bigoted against each other. So
Yes.
I end up having to make a lot of jokes about it, because like otherwise I would jump off of several bridges.
Of course. Well, and this is, I so appreciate, I mean, clearly you think about this all the time, so of course you're
Right.
conceptualizing this, but I so appreciate you saying this, because yeah, again, I'm a white woman, right? But as a woman, like, oh, well, he makes those jokes, but he, but he really knows what he's talking about in terms of this anime, this occult work, the aliens, whatever. And it's like, oh, cool. So I'm just supposed to put up with that.
It.
Yes,
yeah.
Right. For him, like, I have to make these sacrifices for that guy that none of you actually really like, but you think you have access to some interest.
And I guess it goes back to the same thing about like, we've already figured it all out. Like, all the information already exists. So this one guy who, despite the fact that he's a raging bigot, and like you said, nobody even likes him.
Right.
Like, we just assume like he's the only person who knows the secrets to where like Bigfoot is hanging out with Abraham Lincoln. That like, if we don't keep him around, then we have nothing. I guess. I don't know. It doesn't even seem like clear what is missing without this person.
Oh my God. Thank you. This is what I've never been able to figure out. It's like, okay, again, even if you aren't the target of this person's bigotry, I have never met a single one of those people that everyone actually liked.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you worried about losing here? Right. Because it's like, okay, even if he does have access to like the secrets of the Atlanteans or whatever, like, wouldn't you rather, again, if we're dealing with these meat sacks on this planet, wouldn't you rather cultivate relationships with people and not force other people to have to just like suck it up and deal with bigotry? Like, isn't that way more interesting to have conversations again with people that you see as full people and don't think that they should just like steal it and deal with it? Like, it's like, no, I have to deal with that every moment of every day. Like, I want a space where I can just be weird and hang out with other weird friends and not have to be faced with that again. Like, it's so strange to me. And again, that so many people are afraid of calling that out, and doing something about it. It's like, hey, you're not welcome here if you think these things, if you're saying these things. That this is not this can't be your space also. Like, if we value human life, there's no space for this here.
Right. Right. And like I think some of why people get afraid is like it's fair enough that it comes from a place sometimes of like believing the slippery slope, that today it's Ryan who has like some bad opinions about Latinx people, but tomorrow maybe it's, the next person who's said some stuff about trans people that they weren't themselves bigoted, but they just don't know yet. And then like
Yeah.
slowly but surely it's everybody until nobody's left. But that seems like it comes from a really bleak place of believing that like every minoritized person is just like out for blood.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I don't think any of us are. I
Right?
just don't want to be called slurs. Like
The bar is pretty low.
it's so
Yeah.
low. It's not quite rolling on the ground yet, but like it's really
It's
low.
real low. Yeah, exactly.
Really, really low.
Well, that it's, and I think so a book I love is My Grandmother's Hands.
Mhm.
And the way the author talks about how, again, we should look at racism in terms of upbringing and kind of decouple it from the idea of being like a personal flaw, right? And I
Yes.
see that with all forms of bigotry, because being called a racist slur is not equivalent to being called a racist, but a lot of
Right.
white people act like it is. And it's like, no, this is just part of your upbringing, right? Again, my sociology background, it's like we live in a society that is ableist, that is misogynist, that is racist, that is transphobic, that is homophobic. That is the reality of the world we live in. You are going to absorb some of that. That's the reality. You also have the power to fight against it, right?
Yes.
To
Yes.
decolonize your brain, right? You have that ability. So yes, it again, like to not feel like personally attacked if somebody is calling you out for bigoted language or for some like kind of dodgy beliefs like that. Again, it's like how can people just not take personal offense, right? Like that concern. It's like, no, just like listen when somebody then brings it to your attention. Like, hey, you've been misgendering this person. Like, oh, good. Thank you for telling me. I will stop doing that. Right. Like,
Right.
it's like, I don't know. I guess just assume that people will actually have a conversation with you as opposed to just immediately shun you and you're out. Like,
Yeah.
like, again, if you built a relationship with people, they do not really want to be like, no, I'm done with you. It's like,
Right.
they're going to check in with you first if they care about you. And if they don't check in with you first, maybe you didn't really have a relationship with that person
Right.
and your beliefs are a little dodgier than even you are aware of.
And that to me, that last part, that's the big one. Like, I think that there are a lot. So I'm a non-binary person.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that for a lot of people, like they and them are plural nouns.
Yeah.
So like they're just like they're trying to get it in gear to like understand that that's not that's never been the case and that they're just now being hip to it.
Right.
When people make that mistake of using the wrong pronouns for me,
Yeah.
like, okay, like, did you catch yourself? Yeah, cool, great.
Yeah.
Did I have to correct you? I mean, less great, but like, as long as you're like, whoops, my bad, or wow, I didn't mean anything by that. Like, I'm sorry. Like, cool. Let's keep talking about Halo or
Yeah.
whatever other nonsense we were talking about. Like,
Yes.
that is a temporary disruption.
Yes.
But it's when you're like, well, I'm not a bad person. Okay, well, nobody was saying that you were a bad person. So why'd you just tell on yourself? Like, what are we?
Yes.
Like it's not the like the first mistake that like people get upset about. It's the third time of doubling down on like, oh, but it like I'm not a bad person. I'm not a racist. I've had 4 black people over my house. And it's like, if you know how many black people have been in your house, guess what? You're probably a racist.
Oh my God, yes.
Like, if you're counting, if you have, like, is there a bouncer? Do you have a clicker?
Clicker.
You have your race clicker where you're keeping track? Because that's ridiculous. And you know who does that? Bigots do that.
Yeah. Right. Oh my God. Yes. I don't know how to more emphatically agree with everything that you're saying. Again, this is the kind of stuff that I think about all the time. Like,
yeah.
Because it is this ongoing process of revealing, uncovering, unearthing. Like, oh, this is a really bad thing that I was raised to believe. I don't want to do this anymore. So weed it, right?
Yep.
Throw it in the compost. You don't need it. Like,
Yeah.
and you have that power.
Yep.
Keep working.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's so much of it is about building human connections, but it's also about like just learning about how, to quote Tinny, how weird the world is and how much weirder it is than you thought it was.
Yes.
I mean, I think so much about like cryptids and the kinds of cryptids that we talk about. And like, so I'm originally from the South Side in Chicago.
Oh, cool. I live in Evanston.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I think about so much like that nobody ever talks about there being like some weird monster in the alleys on the South Side. Which could there be? Sure, why not? Like,
Yeah, right.
if there's weird stuff in the middle of the woods in Wyoming or in the middle of the desert in Arizona, why couldn't there also be weird stuff in the hood?
Right.
But we'll never know because so many cryptozoologists come from the same kind of background where they're not used to interacting with black and brown people to just even be able to ask the question fluently. What's the weirdest thing that you saw in your neighborhood?
Yes.
Because like I mean, like if you're from the hood, like, or if you're from just like any part of a city, and you've been there for a long time, you probably know about, maybe it's not that there was like this weird, really big rat, but it didn't look like a rat that was like scurrying around. Maybe it's that there were weird sounds and lights coming from a house. And it happened like every third day for a month.
Yes.
And no one knows what it is. So like, how is that not high strangeness? Maybe it's that there's a story about a gang member who everybody was pretty sure died, but like people kept seeing him. Yeah. That's just a ghost, right? Like, but we don't talk about the like black and brown ghosts. Why do we never talk about, we know how many people built the Transcontinental Railroad and that most of those people were Chinese.
Yes.
Where are the Chinese ghosts in Colorado or in Utah or Wyoming or Kansas? Like we never have these conversations about, to put it bluntly, the weird shit that non-white people see.
Yes. Exactly. Yes.
And so we're subsequently missing all of this like potentially like super neat, super wild stuff that like exists because it didn't happen in rural Ohio or in Salem, Massachusetts, or in the Pacific Northwest.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And it just seems like that should be infuriating. Like if you really love like weird stuff, like shouldn't you be absolutely pissed that like they are keeping all this weird stuff from you because it happened in Baltimore or in Detroit or in New Orleans, but like the black part of New Orleans, not the white part of New Orleans.
Exactly.
Like
exactly. And I feel like I, not specifically to this, but I feel like I have seen people say like, well, like UFOs, perfect example. It's like, Black people have seen UFOs. Why don't we have more of those stories? right?
the most famous
Yes.
UFO encounter, like Barney Hill is black,
Yes.
like a whole black person, and like a black person from New Hampshire. So that's like another level of weirdness. Like, where did he come from?
Exactly. Yes.
But like, I mean, black people have seen UFOs. Like, I didn't learn about this until 2 months ago. My mom is like 100% sure
Yeah.
that the day my grandmother died, she astral projected and like told my mom a bunch of information. Super weird, right?
Oh my God, yes.
But like, we still act like black people don't have those experiences.
Yes, exactly.
We act and like, we don't, when we have these conversations, we often talk about them in terms of like black people and white people. We don't even consider that Asian people are real.
Oh my God, yes. Right.
I mean, in general, in our society, don't talk about Native people like they're real.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
that's like a past tense conversation every time.
Every time. Yes.
And unless you want to talk about skinwalkers or like some Indian burial ground or something like that.
Yes.
But then again, it's like very removed, and like, this is like that very unique weirdness that those people think about on the res, or that we made up, because it's more exciting than just saying that some people died here, or that like I just got a bad vibe.
Oh my God. Yes. All of these fetishized racial stereotypes, like narratives, it like you said, this othering, it's like not even people, right? Or something in the past. I remember in high school, we had this little interim. I went to a weird private high school. We had this like little interim session, and it was all about studying Native Americans. And it was driving me crazy because it was all in past tense. Like, these are people who are still alive and have thriving communities all over. Like, this isn't ancient Egypt, right? Like, I can go talk to people right now.
It's easy. It's easy, and most of them speak great English too. So like, like, never been easier. You just have to be willing to have a normal human conversation with another person who maybe doesn't look exactly like you.
And that it's like, why is it, again, especially when you're talking about UFOs and Bigfoots and fairies and all of these things, why is the scariest thing talking to somebody who doesn't look like you? Because that's what a lot of people I see in the field, they're acting like. It's like, really?
Right?
Like, the cognitive dissonance, I can't even form a sentence right now because I can't comprehend it. Like, how do you not, how are you not engaging, especially if you care about stories? Like you said, if you like, there is all of this information, there are all of these stories, all this literature, all this data, right? If you care about getting a complete picture about any of these things, you have to talk to everyone, because they all have stories. It's not like it isn't happening. Again, like, are you someone people can talk to, right? Because again, sociology, that background of like, okay, how are you interviewing people? How are you talking to people? How are your biases coming out while you're interviewing people? Are they going to talk to you based off of how you're treating them? Like, you have to be aware of all of these things. And again, fostering, again, if somebody doesn't look like you and isn't from the same background you are, like, okay, talk to them, right? And be willing to confront whatever you have inside of you, and put that aside. Again, decenter yourself so you can have a real conversation with somebody. Because that wealth of knowledge is out there. People just don't engage.
Exactly. But we can't have this conversation without acknowledging that I don't have a dog in this fight, so it's easy for me to talk about it. That like the Travel Channel and that the Discovery Channel and that
Yes.
sci-fi and that a lot of the like big mass media things that are the way that most people experience the paranormal and high strangeness,
Yes.
that they also make deliberate decisions to tell stories almost exclusively about again people who are in Massachusetts or in rural Ohio, or like
Yes.
maybe sometimes you'll get people talking about the Pacific Northwest. Maybe they'll talk about the South, but it's only like the parts of the South with lots of white people or plantations,
Right.
which is differently difficult.
Yes.
So I mean, like there is also something artificially limiting the realm of the plausible for a lot of people.
Yes. Right.
That unfortunately is like, it does come back to a profit motive, that
Yes.
these entertainment companies know that tight shirt, baggy pants, like that's what a ghost hunter is supposed to look like, and that the body in that tight shirt and those baggy pants like is a white guy, unless it's the Ghost Brothers.
Exactly.
Like,
yes.
it's true that individual people have to do the work to sort of decolonize their whole mindset, and to really like take the time to listen to people who aren't like them and to search those stories out. But it's also true that like most people who are into the paranormal, like the extent to which they really focus on it is on Saturday at 8 o'clock when they sit down to watch Ghost Adventures.
Yeah.
And that's sort of it. So if all they're getting is this one show or this one set of shows, then they're getting the same stuff. And even if they consume maybe a little bit more broadly, I mean, more than likely then you're watching the History Channel, and then you're getting Ancient Aliens, or you're getting my toaster is a portal to hell, or Bigfoot stole my dog, or something like that. I don't know. Like you're getting like the same 12 things that like reify the same 3 stories that are either every sighting of a weird animal, because definitely every cryptid is just a weird animal, happens in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming or Alaska or Arizona or somewhere where nobody lives.
Yes.
Or everybody who thinks about ghosts is a white guy, or the Ghost Brothers, or Amy Bruni.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like if it is a lady, like she's definitely with a dude. She's
Always.
Definitely with a dude.
Exactly. Yes.
Because definitely women can't sense the ghosts without a man, I guess. I don't know. Like there's something important about that like weird gender thing that just like makes the ghost go like, no, thank you. I'm done. I don't want to talk just to a lady. That would be weird.
But if they retain their biases in death, it actually kind of makes sense.
No, and that's a very fair point. That's a really super duper fair point. But I have a feeling that that's not what the Travel Channel is thinking about.
100%. 100%. That's a whole other thing too, because it's so wild to me. Again, every time like a new Fast and Furious movie comes out, it's got a super diverse cast, and of course box office records and whatever. And so many executives are still terrified of the idea of putting people who aren't white men on TV in movies,
right?
And holding up any other type of person as an authority, right? And it's like, all you have to do is look at the data, right? Like people are actually out there and they're hungry to see themselves represented on screen,
right?
They want to see more diverse casts. And the people who don't, again, I rant a lot about people chasing bigot bucks, because I think that is huge issue in the UFO and the occult
Yes.
community,
Yes.
where like, okay, well, maybe we're not racist, but we're not going to call the racism out because like these people have money and they like to spend when they think that somebody agrees with their terrible views. Like,
but on the other hand, like how many black people saw Black Panther like 9 times because they were like, this movie cannot fail. I need this to succeed. Like,
oh my God, exactly.
I went
Exactly.
when Black Panther came out, I went to I was still living in Chicago, and I went to the I forget what the movie theater is called, but it's the only movie theater that's in Chatham.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So the middle of like black middle class Chicago life.
Yes.
I went to the like Thursday preview. You would have thought that I was at like a Hollywood premiere. Like people were like dressed up, but like not dressed up like comic book convention dressed up. Like people were dressed up like I am going to a major event and I want to be seen.
Yes. Yes.
And like you could tell like there was so much energy there, and like people were like, obviously if you were there you bought your ticket,
of course,
and like people were walking out and talking about how they were going to go see it again. And then we know because we have the box office receipts, we know that movie made $1 bajillion.
Exactly.
And that like it doesn't matter if Black Panther 2 is good or not, like we're gonna go see it. Because like what else are we gonna see? Like where else are we gonna get a movie that's like got a whole lot of different kinds of black people living in Africa?
Yes, exactly.
Who aren't like doing mining blood and diamonds or like talking about a real thing that actually happened, but it happened 40 years ago.
Yes.
Or like something really sad.
Right. Oh my God! Right, right.
And that's true for black people, but it's true for all sorts of people of color. It's true for women.
Yes.
It's true for queer people.
Yes.
Like, how much on the internet do people talk about like wanting the one show where like the queer person doesn't die?
Oh my God! Right, right. Yes.
So like you don't have to chase the bigot bucks because the not bigot bucks are like right there. They're right there. It's a huge pile of money, just like ready to be taken.
Oh my God! Thank you. Exactly. Because I also think about how Black Panther spawned WakandaCon, right? Like this idea of Black futurism. Like we're gonna do a whole conference on this, and like it was a success, right? Like people want, again, representation matters. Again, as a chaos magician, right? Like these symbols matter.
Yes.
And to have them out there and to have them for everyone is important, right? It is a source of power. It's something to look up to. It is like a way to imagine a new life for yourself and a new way for the world to be. Like you can only succeed by doing that.
Exactly.
But if you just want to keep reinforcing, again, the same systems of oppression, sure. Zach Bagans, another show.
and I mean, I think what stands to be said is that it seems like Zach Bagans is a very nice man who has a great sense of humor about himself and knows that he's like ridiculous, and like good for him. But honestly, also like maybe there's another person, maybe literally anybody else could host a show.
Oh my God, exactly. Yes, because there are so many people who are interested in this. Like,
exactly.
I just find them on Twitter, like it's not hard. They're out there.
Right? Like Alex Matsuo, like let's give her a show. She's great.
Exactly. Yes. And she knows her shit. Like,
right.
Yeah. Cool.
Easy. Let's do it. Like, why not?
Exactly.
But tight shirt, baggy pants. Like that's what it's gotta look like. Because if it doesn't look like that, people just like won't know that it's ghost hunting.
Shut up, right?
I don't know what I'm looking at. She's talking, but I don't understand these words.
I'm just gonna watch it.
What? I don't get it. Give me Portal to Hell. I understand that.
This is a formula my brain can follow. We'll just do
And
that.
it's got Ozzy's kid in it, and he seems nice. He's a nice young man, right? So like, we'll just do that. That's a lot easier than trying to figure out what this lady is saying. And like, what even is she? I mean, she kind of looks white, but she's not. I don't get it. I don't know.
You could just put her in a tight shirt and baggy pants. Maybe
Right?
then I'd understand.
It's just so disappointing.
Yeah.
And like we keep coming back to, just like, if people could get over this, we could like see so much more weird stuff, which is what we
Yes.
all say we want. It's all we all say that we like crave.
Yes,
It's just like
exactly.
more weird bullshit. But we like pass it up because it's not coming in the right wrapping, or the wrong kind of person is talking about it. And I mean, we've talked a lot about a lot of immutable characteristics, but like, we don't talk a lot about how excuse me, how we talk about like, who in West Virginia gets to talk about the weird stuff that they see. Is it only wealthy people in West Virginia, or only middle class people in West Virginia, or are we like really talking to poor people too?
Oh my gosh, exactly. Yes.
And the weird stuff that poor people talk about.
Well, and also, like, I just like a month ago became aware of the fact that like paranormal and occult, a lot of these conferences, they don't pay their speakers.
Right?
What? Like that alone, again, talk about structural inequality, right?
Yep.
Where you're just like, oh yeah, these people don't get a voice unless you have the money, the disposable income to pay your way into a conference where you can speak.
Right.
People aren't going to hear you. Are you kidding? Are you kidding me? Like, that is so offensive.
And then even like some of the ones that do say that they pay their people are writing bad checks or making promises that they don't intend to keep.
Yep.
So there again, even if you like went into it thinking like, all right, I can make a living for myself doing this, this thing that I love.
Yes.
And then, oh, my rent payment just bounced because so-and-so didn't write the check well, or didn't intend to pay me in the first place. So they just didn't pay me.
Exactly that. And then you're too scared to talk about it because you think you're going to get blacklisted from other conferences. And then there goes any shot you had of becoming a voice in the community.
Exactly. It's ridiculous.
Yes, right.
It's ridiculous. And you want to hope that the reason why people do this is just because of incompetence or like making mistakes, but like, we know that grifters are real. Yes. I mean, like, literally our word for a certain kind of grifter, snake oil salesman, is like a product of high strangeness that was white people peddling fake hoodoo cures.
Wait, what? Really?
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
Oh my God.
So like we've had grifters, like just like in our midst since forever.
Yes.
Long enough that like normies will like use snake oil salesman as like, that's the word.
That's just the ubiquitous word.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's all connected. This is the real conspiracy.
Thank you. Exactly.
It's not that like the chemtrails are like secretly poisoning you because reasons, or like that the government doesn't want you to know that they know about UFOs because reasons. It's like, it's totally that like there are a handful of like rich assholes who are like pitting you against other people.
That's exactly it. Yes.
Or who are just like trying to fleece people.
Yes. Yeah.
It's right there. It's right in front of you.
It's right there. Yes.
It's so mundane. But I guess
Exactly.
that's not as exciting as like that. Like there's like a fish man living in the Everglades that like I don't know, the state of Florida is hiding from you so that you don't know that there are fish people.
Right, because knowledge of fish people would liberate us all from this
Well,
capitalist
that's how
hellscape, right?
we'll ascend through the 5D. Is
Oh my
I know
God.
I've just opened another whole can of nonsense,
I know.
but yeah, it just doesn't it doesn't make sense.
Right, exactly.
And yet,
Yes.
so much of our community is, and I use the word communities on purpose,
Yes.
plural. So many of our communities are based on these like I don't want to say they're nonsense because like some of them are things that I believe in that
Yeah.
like
Right.
sure UFOs are real. Like absolutely. Why couldn't they be? But
Yeah.
like if you can accept that like UFOs are real, like why couldn't you also accept that like racism has a structural component to it that
Yes.
has nothing to
Oh my
do
God.
with
Yes.
like individual people being individually bigoted and that
Oh my God.
like
Yes.
compounding systems have like perpetuated adverse outcomes for black and brown people. Like
Yes.
super easy.
Oh,
It's like not that much more weird or
it,
out there than that like there are people from Lanulos who came to the earth and had a conversation with a weird guy in West Virginia.
and in contrast to Lanulos, like we have documentation, evidence of policies for centuries
Yep,
that have been disenfranchising Black and brown people.
it's right
Like
there.
it's just historical evidence. It's right there.
Yep. We
Oh,
also
but
have like the
yeah.
firsthand accounts of people who were there. I mean,
Oh my God,
like
exactly.
redlining was made illegal. Not that like people stopped doing redlining, but redlining was made illegal when my parents were like 9. like that
Right.
happened like very within
It,
living memory of a lot of people. Like
yes.
literal like gay sex was legalized everywhere in the United States when I was in middle school. No, I was in high school. Like that was like not that long ago. I am not that old.
Right.
So like we
Right.
know it's right there. We can see it. People were there for it. It's written down like
Yes.
literally like not even in secret buildings in
Right.
Washington D.C. It's like in like the National Archives. And you can
Right.
like just go and read the Supreme Court case Loving or Lawrence v. Texas and like learn
Yes.
about it. It's right there. It's super
It,
easy.
it's literally right there. Yes.
All you have to do is just accept that your eyes don't lie to you.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I don't even know. I was like, this is the greatest conversation I've had like a month, I think. Yeah. This is exactly how I feel and think about all of these things. Like, okay, you wanna play with aliens, you wanna play with all these things, fine. Look at what is in front of you, right? Look at what is, like you said, in the National Archive. We have all this, it's all right there. You want to act like this doesn't exist? And if you want to act like real things that we can prove exist don't exist, what agenda are you trying to put forth?
Right.
Right. Maybe examine what is behind that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think just the next part of the conversation, right, is that like so clearly it's not just me and you.
Yeah.
Clearly
Yeah.
there are tons of people who exist who think this way. So I mean, like it seems like if we all just like actually start talking like we believe this way,
Yes.
like that's how we start to build that community. That's how we identify like so we are in community together and we can start saying like so I know that Ryan thinks some pretty bad things about gay people. We don't like him anymore. Like we know that he thinks some interesting thoughts about whatever. and maybe he'll write a paper or he'll make a YouTube video or like do some tweets, and we can like look at those and be like, oh yeah, that's like smart enough. Let's like independently verify that because like maybe he's making it up. But like we don't have to let him sit with us because ultimately like he's just a person making observations about the world, and we're also people who can make observations about the world, so maybe we can see the same things that he did.
Yes. Before I let you go, is there anything that you want to promote? Any like websites you want to send people to?
Yeah, so my blog, where I write about this kind of stuff, is melanatedmagician.wordpress.com. You can follow me on Twitter at melanatedmag2. My wife also has a really great art project that she's working on right now. So she's taking right now it's just the major arcana, and using screenshots from Hellier to make portraits and kind of superimpose the Hellier cast on the major arcana. It's super great. And her website, and she's going to kill me for having to look this up so that I'm getting it exactly right, is wildhornsberry.godaddysites.com.
Amazing. Good. I will link all of those in the description so that people can follow you and follow her.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening and or watching, depending on where you found this podcast. You can find Nick at melanatedmagician.wordpress.com. I'm also going to link their Twitter in the description, as well as the website for their incredibly talented partner. They both are lovely people, and you should give them a follow and be very nice to them. I hope you found this conversation as inspiring and energizing as I did. We talked about incredibly heavy things, and we laughed a whole bunch, and it was pretty incredible. And it was also just nice to know that people care about these issues. You know, that there are people who want to make sure that paranormal spaces and occult spaces are welcoming for people who look different, who come from different backgrounds, who have different life experiences, and that we all benefit from listening to diverse voices from a human perspective, but also from the perspective of learning about the paranormal and developing ideas about the occult. So I hope you keep all of those things in mind and have a playful and curious day.